All right. Thanks again for inviting me to speaking to a very, very special group of parents. Every time I got nervous when I was asking to express my thoughts on successful parenting. And I want to say right here that I'm very bad at what I'm now talking about. And at all cost, I want to avoid the impression that that I have arrived. I've been there, done that. That I can now speak with full authority on the parenting subject because I have done everything right. No, that's far from the truth. I think the only thing qualifying me is I am the father of 3 grown children and the grandfather of a proud one. But I can assure you that I don't do everything right. And I'm still a learner along with everyone else, whether you're young parents with young children or grown up or teenagers or parents to be. But the reason I'm qualified to come here to speak is I think I have learned a great deal of lessons throughout the years. And I long to put share my experience to these anxious parents and parents to be, and try to really encourage them that we can be confident and competent parent in this very challenging and troubling world. So I'm here to walk the fine line here. I'm trying to comfort the disturbed, but hopefully disturb the comfortable. But the last thing I want to do is I don't want to disturb the disturbed. You know what I'm talking about. I really want this particular time together. It's a time of encouragement. It's a time of refreshment. And it's a time of finding the true peace and grace that this world cannot give. So having said that, it's very obvious that the family in the America is in serious trouble. So let me just refresh and review, what does the parenting look like? So I came up with 2 or 3 analogies to share with you. First of all, I think parenting is like a sail in a uncharted water. What do I mean by that? It's number one is unpredictable, right? And sometimes it's life-changing and a storm coming, and often it's a very humbling experience that requires extra time and effort and wisdom and energy to navigate through sometimes troubled water. And we can all open up your iPhone, watching the news, you know what I'm talking about. This is really a troublesome world. And sometimes I think parenting is like a flight into unknown skies. And of course, in the United States, with 2 parents working and very chaotic schedules, it is easy sometimes to switch into the autopilot parenting. But however, once we're in this autopilot mode, our actions and activities are no longer intentional. We become absent-minded. We just fly through like 15 years, and before we know it, our kids are going to college, and those lovely babies now turn into strangers, something we don't expect. And of course, it's a bumpy ride, right? Like UA, United Airlines, welcome to the friendly sky. But we know the parenting is not so friendly skies. And from time to time, if you hop on the airplane from Houston, for example, to Philadelphia, which I've tried many, many times, sometimes you'll hear this from the cockpit. This is your captain speaking. Please fasten your seatbelt. As I said, this is a predictable, life-changing, and sometimes bumpy ride that requires time and efforts for us as parents to really good to navigate. So let me give you some example. What do I mean by bumpy and by very challenging time? For example, your house is noisy or noisy, I should say. This is 2. I have 3. I cannot imagine. They're only 5 years apart. The 3 keep on running around and drive us crazy. Especially at the time, I was only a grad student. studying my PhD and all the postdoc. It's very, very unsettling and very, very nerving. And of course, as a result, once you have 3 rambunctious kids and your house is not as clean you would like it to be. And of course, there's a lot of daily chores. And lo and behold, your laundry has piled up once again, as if you just washed it 2 days ago. Dirty socks everywhere. If kids has outdoor activities in the snow, you name it. And of course, if you pack your kids' own lunch, and sometimes you open up the fridge, you just discover at 11 p.m. there's nothing to pack for our kids for tomorrow. Or sometimes I've been doing that multiple years. I'm very good at this. It just broke up another fight. And sometimes the fight is not in our living room, it's in the back seat of my Toyota Camry back then. I still remember my daughter, my third one, youngest daughter, and was always fighting with my second one. It's a boy. And sitting in the back seat, and from the rear mirror, I'm driving to the church, I can hear, "You touched me." "No, I did not." "Yes, you did. You did it first." "No, I did not." Anyway, you know what I'm talking about if you've been there, done that. And of course, as kids growing up and more, and if you look at your calendar on the refrigerator, you look at your computer, your notebook, you know the schedule for this week looks impossible, right? And let's just give you another picture, some old school way. Of course, I think it's just over exaggerating, and I found out this from internet. Probably it's a dad and driving on the road, and you can see all kinds of postage here. Of course, we have all kinds of experience. We become a chauffeurs driving our kids to different activities, sometimes 3 people, 3 different places, but we need to pick them at the same time if you don't arrange a car ride. And of course, sometimes our budgeting is the issue. Our cash flow, we got layoff, job transition, some unpredicted expenses, car broke down, medical bills. And sometimes we simply have more expenses than money. And as a parents, we've just been surrounded by bombarded with these daily challenges, daily necessities. And what really frustrated me at that time is as if none of the people around me seems to be satisfied and even showing appreciation. "Oh, Daddy, you're working so hard, providing the meals and bread on the table." No, no one feel satisfied. And I truly feel exhausted. And I felt I was unappreciated or underappreciated. And sometimes you probably yell at my kids, "What? How can you do this to me? You know, I've been working so hard. How can you do this to me? Why you have done that?" And so on the website, I found a very interesting picture, and so I added the lyrics and to just demonstrate. Well, you know, parenting isn't that stressful at all. It's an easy ride. But the person who said this is her name is Jessica, and she's only 27 years old. What I'm trying to say here is parenting is really taxing. Parenting is really, really hard. Parenting really takes a huge toll on not only our physical strength, but emotionally and also spiritually. So, but parenting is also a very serious business. But we're facing these challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic hit us. It really exacerbates an already overwhelmed duties that we parents facing every day, right? And the lockdown of the countries, the offices, not to mention schools, and the slowdown economy. And now once it's now gradually open up, and now in the news, we hear the supply chains issue, higher inflation rate, and everything got so expensive, just mounting problems one end of the other. It's really not very friendly, or probably we should say, someone should say, we really choose a bad time to be a parent. for if we are young people. But I disagree. I will share with you later why I say that. But COVID-19 totally changed the way we interact and with other people. So in the internet, you will find a very interesting meme. He says, at one point, history, the tradition was used to greetings and signs of respect, dubbed handshake. So we used to shake people's hands. We used to hugging each other, but it's all stopped. This is a story. This is a history now. What happened? It happened in 2019 BC, but the BC stands for before coronavirus. So before the COVID-19 hit, our so-called normal life, and now the COVID-19 hit after, I should say we're not really after, we're still in the pandemic. The parents are experiencing more challenges than we used to be. So I call the 2020 is AC1, and I put on the Chinese name here. The meaning is after coronavirus #1. And during those past 2 years, the parents are really suffering along with our kids and also along with the school teachers and the entire society and the country as a whole. I should say the human race in this globe as a whole. And here just to show you a picture of the total cases over the past 2 years. Of course, the big one here is just the Omicron outbreak, starting from November, starting from North in South Africa. Now it's coming down, which is very encouraging. But we all know during this pandemic, our most major concern is our safety, our family, our loved one safety, not only our community safety. So we try to find all kinds of different ways to mitigate this particular situation before the vaccine became available, right? So the wearing face mask, this whole thing has become political and sometimes very divisive on different areas, depends on your political stance. But let us admit, the COVID-19 has really taken toll on all of us, especially parents. And as a father, I can only imagine, even though my own 3 grown-up kids, but I have every 100% empathy to my oldest son, who just have 1.5-year-old boy, and the way he handled very, very stressful. We know the young parents are really suffering, stressful. And of course, I wish we can be poised to be calm and peace and having comfort in saying that, well, everything's going to be okay. But what I think the most challenging part is during the school lockdown, the parents spend a lot of time helping our kids for online studies. And we know it's not very effective. And the span of attention, the way of interacting with teachers, and not to mention there's no classmates at that time. It really hampered efficient studies in terms of communal activities. And here in this cartoon, the daddy was the teacher now. Okay, let's do some alphabet. And so the daddy was starting with NHL, and NBA, NFL, MLB, PGA. Say any questions? Oh, okay, no question. Let's start watching some football games or game. And the mom would just say, "Oh my God, this is why I'm so afraid." The homeschooling. And by the way, tomorrow is the Super Bowl. I don't know, you're rooting for Cincinnati Bengal or LA Rams. But what I'm trying to hear is to review some of the difficulties that we're experiencing right now. The main point here is, in the middle of all the endless parenting activities, I think we got lost. We got lost. We are doing a lot of things, a lot of good things, I should say, but we don't know why. And some of the good things become the bad things. Because why? Because we have been swallowed up into this daily grind of parenting. We lost sight of what it is that we're working for or we're building toward. These menial tasks that we have to do day after day get reduced to endless catalog of, I call it unattractive duties that don't seem to have any overarching vision that hold us all together as a parent and with meaning and purpose. If we lose that sight, I think the frustration, the depression, anger will be the natural, very natural products, because we don't have the big picture, what it is, especially when pressure comes. But in this case, so what does it take to be a good parent? What does it take to be a parent? Well, let me give you a parenting definition from one of the textbooks. Is that parenting is the process of promoting and supporting the physical, emotional, social, and intellectual development of a child from infancy to adulthood. So it takes a lot, it really takes a valley, it takes a village to raise a kid, to raise a child from infancy to adulthood. And we provide a role to promote, to support, to facilitate, to nurture. It's a huge, huge, awesome task. But of course, we're exhausted. We're exhausted. And on the website, I also found a very interesting 2 months. Mom and dad, you can read the label. It's hilarious, but it's so true. The super mom and super dad, what do they need? Of course, number one, 0% nap time. And we all sleep deprived, especially when we have small infant. But it takes a lot of characters, a lot of traits to really be a good mom and good dad. So let me set the stage here. So although we are exhausted parents, we tend to come to a webinar or a seminar, we tend to ask for more effective strategies for parenting. We want to find 7 easy steps. We want to find some tips or 20 ideas to raise a child or something. But I think in this particular time that we have together, I'm not here to give you a know-how or protocols you can follow. I cannot give you a one-size-fits-all strategy. You just apply this and your kids will be just doing fine. But I believe that what we really need as a parent is a big picture worldview that can explain and make sense of our task, why we are parents. And this worldview can guide and motivate us, give us strength to be a parent with peace and joy. It's not a task. It's not an obligation. It's not a duty. It is a joy, and it's a journey, and it's a rewarding journey. I think we need that big picture to help us to look at an entire perspective. So here I'm trying to provide is hopefully is a new perspective, or at least for us to reflect. Because we need a parenting worldview. And this worldview or this system of belief sometimes expose how we rear, how we cultivate, how we raise our children. And it is very critical and very important for all parents to examine the system of belief that shapes our moment-by-moment interactions with our children. Because it was during those activities, the interaction with our children, our worldview got exposed, and our kids are looking at us and are learning, they're mimicking, they're copying from us by the way we show and how we deal with our kids. So the way we think about this worldview, or the way we think about interacting with our world, our society, our families, are typically surrounded by 4 areas. And what are those 4 areas? Number 1, identity. Number 2, our work. Number 3, the way we view success, the way we view our reputation. But in the interest of time, allowed, I can only to afford to tell you a little bit about identity. So today's talk is more or less involving one of the central component of this worldview is the question of identity, which is the question for the who I am question. So what is a parent's identity? Where do we find our sense of who we are, that self, assurance, the durable, true self? Where is that resource? Few parents think about it, and almost none of us are aware that we do this worldview thing every single day, because our parenting is always shaped by where we're looking for identity. For example, most of the time we're looking identity from the outside world. Let me give you one example. This is the watermelon. This watermelon coming from Vancouver. It's 200 Canadian dollars several years ago. Why is a square watermelon? Watermelon is supposed to be round, right? So it's supposed circle shape, because the worldview is shaping, the cage is shaping this particular watermelon. But you can see here, there's a little tiny watermelon. It's in the natural round shape. So sometimes we have to consider the worldview is like this particular box. They're shaping us. If we found identity from the outside world, and that worldview shaping us, and our identity will be based upon that worldview. For example, we're living in a very competitive world. So this world is trying to tell us the achievement, our attainment are the major indicators to identify who we are. Because it's competition. The whole life is competition. So we need to achieve, we need to make success. We need to continue to climb up the corporate ladders. And that become our identity. So here's a cartoon. The doctor is asking, how's your self-image? And this guy said, I'm no good. Why? If you believe that the square watermelon story, because the secular worldview of identity, it reduces the sense of a worth to purely instrumental in their significance, which means if you're useful, you are good people, you're great people. If you don't make any contributions, you're nobody. Think about this competition of this world. And therefore, we are living in this particular ladder. Our life is coming from the very beginning, from the infancy. We're thinking our kids need to be successful. He or she need to be success to a certain level, even though I do not know how to define success at that time. But since everybody is climbing this ladder, might as well just join the bandwagon. So Alain de Botton, he wrote a book. In that book, I made a quote here. I just cite a quote with you. He said, we believe in a meritocracy, that anyone who is of humble means is so only because of a lack of ambition and saving. It is an embarrassment now to be merely faithful and not successful. So if you're not trying to climb up the ladders, that means you lack an ambition. If you're a stay-at-home mom, that means you are not really be part of this world. After many, many years of education, you have a lucrative package or lucrative work, compensation, salary, and now you decide to go back home to take care of the changing diapers, you lack an ambition, you're not successful. However, if the mom is faithful, saying, well, I want to spend my time with my kids during their growing up lesson because I want to provide the spiritual, intellectual foundations from infancy to adulthood, that's a parenting. I would like to make that sacrifice. But our society said, no, that's not successful. So what do we do then? So from this worldview, of course, we need a good education. Why? Because you have a good job. Good resume can land in a good job. What does a good job means? That means a good salary, good income. Therefore, you can start a family and get married, starting family, buy a nice house, whether in Pearland, Katy, Sugarland, you name it, and then you can enjoy your life. That's a worldview. That's this world shaping us. But when we have that worldview in our mind, and when we interacting with our kids, we also infuse that worldview to our kids. However, I have to tell you this, and this is the poster when I was a PhD student in the laboratory. We have this poster posted on the wall because it seems we would never be able to graduate. Not to mention get a tenure track in a university. So here it says only 20,000 days until retirement. But when you think about it, is our life, our entire journey from infancy, adulthood to our deathbed, the entire preparation is just so that 22,000 days later, we can retire in a comfortable lifestyle. So you now see this worldview is ridiculous. It doesn't give us a meaning. It is a lucrative. It's crazy when you think about this. You lose motivation. So I'm going to tell you several inconvenient truths. First of all, this identity is crushing. It's burdensome. It means that the society, they adulates winners, but they despise losers. And they're showing contempt for weakness. You're no good. You have no use. You can just, nah. But as a parents, the success or failure of our children is now seen as our identity. That's a problem now. Because this adds a new weight on our soul, put there by these modern worldview, modernity, and that is why we parents are so stressful. We cannot afford to fail because the child is our precious, our little one. They cannot afford to fail. But how do we know if we are putting our identity in our children, though? So let me give you at least 3 things let's think about. First of all, we probably put too much emphasis on success, which I already alluded to. And we put too much concern about our reputation. I will share a little bit later. And we have a huge desire to control. I'm not saying focus on success, reputation, discipline, controlling is bad. The key word is too much. Too much in such an extent that become rigid, and they create a stereotype. For example, we think American kids is sports, celebrity, and for Asian kids, for Chinese, from my background, got to be science, math, STEM, lawyers, medical doctors, that particular track, because that's a successful career path. I give you one example. I tell you one thing that my miserable failure. My second son, when he was in high school taking SAT, when the SAT score returned, he only got about 680 in the math section. I was furious. I said, "Why don't you get 800?" And he looked at me and said, "Why should I get 800? I said, "Because you're Chinese." And he yelled at me back, saying, "Who said the Chinese kids take SAT, their math has to be 800? Then I took it aback. I said, "Yeah, who said that?" Simply because I'm very good at math when I was in Taiwan. And why I just naturally infuse this idea, entertain this idea that my kids has to be like that. But a lot of things I recognize, I still have that worldview. I have that stereotypic. I will have a cultural belief system, right? In so doing, for example, Asian parents, the tiger mom, tiger dad, we want the best of our kids, nothing wrong with it. But in so doing, like I said, if we lose that big picture, the tiger mom and tiger dad's mentality is we treat our kids as a project, as a property, as a task. There are certain checkbox that these kids need to fulfill so that on their resume, on the college essay, these admission officers would take a special look at my kid because my kid is one of the kind. He's a captain, his community service, his everything. And so that all the Ivy League schools will send in their I-20 admission, give the full-time scholarship, full ride, and to go to one of this great school. And so they can get good job, good life, and 22,000 days later, they can retire. Is that how we raise our kids? Is that how we think we define that's a successful parenting? So what is the consequence of that kind of worldview? That worldview is then we tend to get our identity from our children. As a result, our children are saddled with this unbearable burden of parents' sense of worth. Because the children, their success is our identity of who we are as parents. The performance of our children is closely tied or linked to our identity segment. So let me tell you the other inconvenient truths. If you do this way, if we look in our identity from our children, I guarantee you, I've done that before, parenting will be a miserable place to look for our identity. So if parents who are looking to their children for identity to take their children's failure personally and respond to their children with personal hurt and anger, like I said, I invest you financially so much on this. I want you to go to a certain elite school for a certain track. And now you're telling me you want to study history? Or you want to study English literature or medieval English? Right? Because our trajectory of our kids' success is those world has depicted. And if our children develop a certain interest and is really good at it, and that truly can manifest and use their talents to contribute to the common good of the society, and when they reported a different idea than ours, we are disappointed to the least, hurt, anger, so no. You cannot drop this out. You have to add in these schools as your top notch. Second one, this is an exhausting and discouraging way to live. That's why we are so stressful. Because all this, it produces a pressure and anxiety beyond the levels we can bear. No wonder USA is the United States of anxiety. It is very exhausting to need our little immature children to perform well in order to make us feel good. It is exhausting to chase the success after success, but we've never been fully satisfied because our kids are not good enough. Practice. And these are all self-inflicted anxiety. And as parents, we also work. In the working place, it's not friendly too, because they're also coming back with tons of burdens. And we then bring back to our home. You can see the tension within the family. we all want a way out. We all want a way out. There's a better way that we don't have to trap in this particular scenario, right? It's a vicious circle. Here's another cartoon picture. I think my iPhone is broken because I pressed my home button. I'm still working here. And not to mention now we're working from home. Some of you, the line between the work and our personal life start getting blurry and blurrier. And we live really truly in a pressure cooker. And in this very, very difficult situation, as if the whole family, especially in this very economic tension and downturn, as if we're pushing this big stones uphill. But again, the pandemic hit, the virus totally threw us off in such a way that, just like Apollo 13, this particular movie, we know there's something is not right. Something's wrong, right? Of course, he's in Houston, so Houston, we have had a problem. So what is the problem? So let's think about what is the problem. The problem is, let me give you another inconvenient truth. The problem is, we parents, we look to our own children for their deep affirmation. The children, they let us know who we are based on their performance. So we got affirmed by our children. So you can see the danger of that, because the children is still developing. They're fragile, they're vulnerable. They cannot do everything in 100%. If they are imperfect, even us, we are not perfect, right? But in so doing, here's a very inconvenient truth I want to share with you. Think about it. Actually, deep inside, we are idol worshipers. We are worshiping idol. We are worshiping something that can never satisfy us. So there's a theologian, his name is John Calvin. John Calvin has a very famous quote. He said, "The human heart is a factory of idols." Human heart is a factory of idols. Why? Because every one of us is an expert inventing idols. We are very good at inventing idols. We treat something good and we turn that into an ultimate good. So who is that ultimate good? As a parenting, if we're not careful looking at our worldview, that good is actually our kid, our children. So think about it. Is it possible that we want our children to succeed because we need them to succeed to prove our self-worth? Could it be that we are so focused on our children's accomplishment that we have not paid enough attention to the conditions of their hearts? They're struggling. And we keep on providing or demanding more extracurricular activities, but they cannot do it. They are almost at a threshold of breaking down. But we focus on accomplishment, the outward appearance, but we overlook their inside, those tender hearts that need to be taught, nurtured, and provide nutrients spiritually. And could it that be that our focus on success is actually rooted in asking our children to give us that satisfaction of heart? But parents, it never works. It won't work, and it will never work. It would never work to treat a child as our trophy. Our child is a real human being. These are not our bragging power. They are precious, precious human beings. And they still need us to be role models. I'll talk about role models later, toward the latter part of my talk. So in so doing, I said we are the factory of the idols, and we are very good at inventing idols. So in this 21st century, especially in North America, we create a lot of idols. I call it a modern golden calf. You look at these pieces, they are all good things. Don't get me wrong. Yes, we need to be motivated, have certain ambition to reach successes. And yes, we need to having a working hard to provide income, provide to be having a respect our culture. All these are all good, but sometimes we treat it as the ultimate good. Sometimes the family can become our idol. So that's one main point here. Let's think and look at those idols that we have. And most likely I'm the first one to confess. I use my 3 kids as trophies many times. Yeah. And it's really horrible. And it's never satisfied. So would there be an alternative way for parenting? In other words, we need to find a true source of identity, right? We need something that tells us who we really are, and I will explain more. So we need to find out our identity as a parent. I'm not talking about our kids yet. I'm talking about parent. Who am I, right? This is one of the most pressing questions. Although young people will ask during growing up, who am I? I think we as parents, if we're growing up, we still need to ask the question. Because this question haunts every teenager. In March, I'll focus on more about this who am I, the identity issue regarding the teenager. But as a parent, we also need to think about this. So who am I? How do I know that this person or this particular way of telling me who I am affirm my true value, durable value? It doesn't change over situations, doesn't change over time, and it's a core of my true self. So let me introduce one idea and terminology. So hopefully you will understand why this is so important. We need a source to affirm us. I'll give you one example. This is an Austrian ethologist, which means he studied animal behavior. He's Austrian, and he has a very renowned work. We call it Imprint or imprinting. Because of this important experiment, he won the Nobel Prize in 1973 in physiology and medicine. So what is an imprint or imprinting? And here, in his famous experiments, what Lawrence did was he was splitting a batch of geese, the gray-legged geese, their eggs into 2 batches. One set is a control, just raised by the natural mother, the geese. So let them hatch and then the mother taking care of them. But the other one, experimental set, is Lawrence himself. During the hatching process, when the gosling came out from the egg, and Lawrence was right there. And the very first impression that these geese look and become their mother figure. That imprint, you look at it, that's my mom. And from that point on, they follow that figure. So it's because they see Lawrence. So Lawrence are their mother. So you look in this picture, you can see the 3 geese legs will follow Lawrence whenever he went and mimicking his behavior. And it's truly amazing because these geese identified, this is my mom, and I'm gonna follow. Their identity has been determined by something else, right? Interesting enough, so a few days later, when these geese, or these gray-lag geese were introduced to their real natural mother, the geese look at the real bird, nothing. He still follow Lawrence. So from this experiment and other experiments, Lawrence developed a theory of imprinting. So he developed a hypothesis that there's very short window opportunities, and that the basic characteristics and behavior could be shaped by that particular resource. But after that window opportunity, and once the idea been solidified, and it's very difficult to change it anymore. So what does the imprint tell us is our affirmation, the resource of affirmation, has to come in from someone who treat us really, really nice. Let me give you one example. In the book of Lord of the Rings, J.R. Tolkien, he has a famous quote. He said, "The praise of the praiseworthy is above all rewards." In other words, if our identity source is someone that we can praise, someone is praiseworthy, that we love him, we adore him, and if that person or that resource adored us, accept us, adopt us, and be with us, what is the outcome? Then we feel secured. We'll feel we are worthy because that praiseworthy person accepted me just who I am, not because of my performance, not because my outward achievement. It's simply because that praiseworthy person really praises me. But think about that, and back to our image issue here. So if our identity is wrapped up in something, for example, our children, and we lose it, then we lose our very sense of self, right? So what is our daily experience tell us? For example, if our parents are getting our identity from our children, and sometimes we won't be able to give our children criticism because why? Because they could be got anger and say, oh, no. So sometimes we spoil our kids by not providing discipline because we were afraid our disciplinary actions or our anger would devastate our kids. And so sometimes our kids not growing up like a man, there's no manhood. And sometimes the adulthood are now prolonged. Sometimes you have 35 years old, they're still living with parents and have no motivation to really develop their own personal life. And if our children have problems and does not give us, for example, the academic performance, the grade, right? It's not a straight A, that is expected, and their performance will devastate me. Right? Can you imagine if I want to send all my 3 kids to Ivy League school and none of them achieve that goal after I spending years of education as taking mom and dad, I will feel devastated. I'll feel shamed. I've all my life, all my investment is gone, right? Think about this important thing. If we wrap us up something that's fragile and we lose that particular thing, we lose our identity. So I think I better stop for the next 5 minutes. So where do we, or whom do we find our identity then? So remember, I found a source. I don't call a place. Now I'm trying to find a person now because I'm talking about a parent. First of all, there must be somebody whom we adore, who adored us, right? For example, we are a hero. If that hero adored us, oh yeah, we're good. And someone who we praise, who praise us. I already shared that with J.R. Tolkien's quote. The praiseworthy person, if they praise us, will feel so good. However, if the person's regard is based on our fallible, inconsistent life endeavor, our identity will be just as vulnerable and fragile. Because we put our faith, we put our entire identity on something that in itself is also fragile or fallible. It's not predictable, it's not durable, it changes over time. And so our identity becomes fleeting and sometimes confusing, sometimes contradicting. Not to mention it's also crushing us. So when you look at these three particular criteria, not a single person in this world, or not a single thing in this world, including our job, our title, our socioeconomic status, can truly be a reliable, truthful resource or foundation of our identity. In other words, not this person cannot be lost. Yeah, if it's durable, it has to be there persistently, right? It has to be readily accessible every single time. So now we can always check, always align our identity with that particular source. It's durable, never changing, consistent, and more importantly, it will never lose. It's always there. Because if we lost that particular thing, we lost our identity, right? For example, if the iPhone is my identity, I lost my iPhone, I will be very upset, for example. But now I'm talking parenting. If the children are our identity resource, if the children, I guarantee you, the children will hurt us, will drive me crazy, and we lose our very sense of self. So obviously, no human can meet these standards. That's the very natural conclusion. No human being in this world can provide that kind of durable, consistent, and I would say foundational identity. Obviously, the only thing that can provide is the one who is immutable, can bring that affirmation. So as a Christian, toward the end of my lecture, I would like to say, parents, if we don't know, we cannot find our identity, something outside our children, our work, our family, our wealth, if we are not resting our identity in this immutable Jesus Christ, this unchanging God, then we will constantly looking for identity from outside world. And as a parent, the very easy target, the low-hanging fruit, is our children. And that's why we are so successful. We are so stressful. We are so anxious. And hopefully, during this particular sharing, I hope our parenting worldview will be unleashed, that our view will be transformed. And I would leave with you with this particular quote that I really like. I want to share with you, and as a blessing and as encouragement to each one of us as parents. It is not the load that breaks you down. It is the way you carry it. It's a rewarding journey. Now I'm looking back. It's a joyful, of course, a lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment. But as a father, put this way, let me paraphrase General MacArthur's his famous quote. He said, if you give me $1 million to ask me to go back to the boot camp, I will not do it. if you give me $1 million to purchase my bootcamp experience, I will not sell it. I will not sell it. So when I looking back, I think this parenting experience is very rewarding when you found your true identity in Christ, not on your fallible children. They also need Jesus Christ. And once the whole family are united based on that foundation, unshakable foundation, and that begin the process of our journey, our adventure, that called parenting. So I think my time is up. I want to just stop here, my sharing, and thank you very much for your attention